Welcome to the
Hey, everybody.
Cosmopolitics and What the Hell Takes Happy Hour. It's only Thursday, and there's so much news that, as we said, whether you like all the things that are happening or you're drowning your sorrows, we definitely need a cocktail. So, Danny, welcome.
Welcome to everybody. It is another week. And each week I say to myself, it's not going to be like last week because this has got to slow down because I'm exhausted. But no, it's just like last week, only hot takier than even that. All right, so we have a lot to celebrate this week, though. We've really had some good news, actually. The signing of the minerals deal between the United States and Ukraine was great. The White House statement, the Treasury Department statement, I'm sorry, was great.
I
And
thought it was
so
really
instead of
interesting, and I think we should kind of break it down what it said, because I thought it was not just about like what it said, but the kind of message that it sent to Vladimir Putin.
I loved all of it. I want to talk about it, but first I want to talk about the
Yes,
Kyiv
the
mural because
deep
we
diving.
have the because instead of having a Moscow mule, we're
That
renaming
was
it.
so 1960s, communist Moscow, tin cup. This is a
Exactly.
this is a modern day Kyiv mule.
So 2 ounces of vodka, everybody knows I'm sorry, I'm gonna try really hard to put different liquors in, but these are my sympathies. 2 ounces of vodka, and then lime juice, half an ounce. And you can really throw in whatever you like, but, I like grapefruit bitters and then some grapefruit soda. Uh, Again, it's a little bit of cheating. You can use a cheap one, you can use a fancy one,
You could probably put a little
but
tequila. I bet you would also be good with tequila, because the a lot of these vodka cocktails also taste good with tequila. I'm just saying.
I'm just saying, I agree. I don't like gin and grapefruit that much, so toss in some ice, put in a grapefruit wedge, knock it back. You can put in as much or as little vodka as you like, honestly, or tequila. Or even a little Campari, because I think that bitterness actually goes nicely, and also it gives you a little sunsetty color if you have a clear one. But here's to our friends in Kyiv. Long live the Kyiv mule and screw the Moscow mule.
And I don't see your what the hell cocktail shaker, but Eric
I
Weisbrot, I'm
know.
still waiting for my Cosmopolitics Yeti cocktail shaker. Okay, on to the news. I want to go back to the statement because, I think it's really interesting. Lately, we've been talking about how all the statements that come out from the White House and the rest of the administration are actually written in Trump language with all caps, or, kind of victimization, or you could just imagine this coming as a tweet from President Trump. But I thought this statement was more like the kind of statement that you would see coming from any other administration, Democrat or Republican, that really was very supportive of Ukrainians and what the U.S. is doing there.
Okay, so just in case folks didn't see it, what the Treasury Department statement said yesterday is, quote, as the president has said, the United States is committing to help facilitate the end of this cruel and senseless war. This agreement signals clearly to Russia that the Trump administration is committed to a peace process centered on a free, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine over the long term. President Trump envisioned this partnership between the American people and the Ukrainian people to show both sides' commitment to lasting peace and prosperity in Ukraine. And to be clear, no state or person who financed or supplied the Russian war machine will be allowed to benefit from the reconstruction of Ukraine. Close quotes. Lisa, you or I could have written that.
I know what happened over the last few weeks. This is more, and if we talk about what's in the deal, um, you know, all of this kind of really does work for the Ukrainians. It works for the United States, but people have been trying to torpedo the deal. what came out of it seems more like what your colleagues um, in the what you
Partisan.
call the OG Marxisan of the Republican Party were looking. What happened in the last few weeks to kind of turn the president around in terms of being more supportive of Ukraine and a little bit more frustrated with Russia and Putin?
I think a few things happened, and it's a great question, and thank you. It is so nice to have a straight conversation, right? Not, we don't need to have. There's no innuendo. There's no need. Actually, this is an interesting analytical question. My guess, and Donald Trump does not whisper in my ear and tell me what happened, but my guess is A, Putin refused to agree to a ceasefire. That attack, that Vladimir, please, stop attack, really reminded the president who he's dealing with. Number two, all of the sidekicks were gone. And at the Pope's funeral, you saw that great picture of the president and Volodymyr Zelensky. And what it reminded us of is these two guys actually they
Get
had a
along.
mind meld previously. They got along. That Oval Office meeting screwed everything up, but now they were back man to man, and guess what? They got along, and I think that helped as well. I think it's really important to remember that America is always saved by our enemies. We didn't get into World War II. We didn't get into World War One. We haven't been tough on Iran. We have done a lot of dumb things. Our instinct is always to be the nice guy, and our enemies remind us, yeah, you are who you are, and I think that's a big part of this.
Yeah, and
But it
Trump,
was
look, he thought he had this great relationship with Putin, and he thought him and Putin were speaking the same language. And I think he thought this guy, remember, he said maybe the other day, I don't remember the exact language, maybe he's playing me, maybe he's, flopping me along or whatever the hell language he used, but he doesn't want to look like a loser.
right. I mean, and good. I don't want us to look like losers either. And the fact that this was followed by an immediate announcement of an arms deal was just like, again, this is what we've been working towards. Okay, it's not unreasonable to make the argument that you don't want the American taxpayer to continue to support the burden. I think it's in our interests, but I recognize that there are people who don't. What was really interesting, and you and I talked about this at the time, was about an hour before. Did you saw the tweet from Don Jr.?
No.
Oh my God, did I not send that to you? Don Jr. tweets out, um, the neocon cabal is trying to undermine my father. I sent this to the neocon cabal, I guess Don Jr. would say, and said something's happening because clearly the Russians were reaching out to their friends like Tucker Carlson and others and saying, hey, something bad's happening because they knew that the deal was getting signed with the Ukrainians. I love the fact that this came out right. I just hope it.
Okay, and this, we're going to talk more about this. I want to talk about Mike
Like
Waltz
Waltz.
and
Oh, like
and just
Waltz.
this whole, which goes back to this whole neocon cabal and such. But, you know, why I don't think a lot of people know that Donald Trump Jr. Is not supportive of this wing of the Republican Party that wants a robust foreign policy, a strong presence, believes in American exceptionalism. And has it not dawned on the president that his son is trying to undermine him?
I can only look at this and say, eh, maybe not. He loves his son, and good for him. You
Of
should love
course.
your
And,
children.
and the son, don't think, I think the president has various worldviews, as we know, but if this deal was really important to the president, as you know it was, and he was holding out for this minerals deal, I don't understand why his son would try to torpedo the deal.
I don't get it, but something. I've got a perfect transition for you. Look, there's no question that in MAGA world there is not just one monolithic view of the world, because Donald Trump, I think, is far more internationalist than a lot of people want to give him credit for. And I'm going to read you a sentence in a second, but I think that he represents a different part than JD Vance does. JD Vance doesn't want to do those things. We saw this all in the Signal chat. You and I talked about it. Remember? Right? Pete Hegseth, he's not part of that. JD Vance, no, we shouldn't do the Houthis. Tucker Carlson's out there tweeting, what have the Iranians ever done to us? Like, I don't, gee, Tucker, let
Yeah,
me think.
there's this two kind of, there's three then in the Republican Party. So there's the OG, original gangsta, Republicans, part of the neocon
Reagan,
cabal,
what Mark and I call the
the
Ron
Reagan
Con.
conservatives, if you will.
Right.
Then there's, some of the MAGA people that could, go which way the wind blows. And then there are people that are definitely more of the quote unquote restraint. Some people might call them isolationists. Some people might call them protectionist. But, I think, and that's why I always say, and everyone comes back to me and says, no, you can't do that. But I don't understand why more people won't try to push Donald Trump in that direction and show him that there is support in the country for that kind of foreign policy.
Look, there is support in the country for that foreign policy. Americans, at the end of the day, are great people who believe in the freedoms that they have, and they may not want to fight, they may not want to pay, but at the end of the day, they do not like seeing other people oppressed. And you see this every day in thousands of different ways. And I agree with you. I would love to see that message more clearly articulated, but I think there's a battle for the soul of the country. I think I think that's true in the Democratic Party as well.
Well, I just
You got the
wish
Bernies and
I
the
wish,
AOCs, and you got the
yeah,
Schumers. These are
I
different
just wish
people.
when it comes to the Republican Party, I just wish those members of the party, and there are still a lot of them, would fight harder instead of just kowtowing. Let's talk about Waltz.
So this was my transition for you. Uh, on Truth Social, which I still don't have.
Me
The
neither. I have it, but
weird,
I'm afraid to stay. I'm afraid to go on it, actually.
so weird. I'm not afraid. I'm just, I get all my Truth Social from Twitter if I need it, and everywhere
I get
else
it
as
from
well.
you.
There you go. You're getting some Truth Social from me right now, baby. I am pleased to announce, said the real Donald Trump, that I will be nominating Mike Waltz to be the next United States ambassador to the United Nations. From his time in uniform on the battlefield, in Congress, and as my national security advisor, Mike Waltz has worked hard to put our nation's interests first. I know he will do the same in his new role in the interim Secretary of State. Marco Rubio will serve as national security advisor while continuing his strong leadership at the State Department. Together, we will continue to fight tirelessly, and this really interested me, fight tirelessly to make America and the world safe again. Again, what do you think?
Why? So he didn't really want to let him go. Why did he not fire him?
I
Because we
I don't
know,
know.
obviously, Laura Loomer and, that whole idea that, again, trying to get rid of this neocon cabal in the White House.
Can we just stop a second and say everybody who says neocon cabal, that is nothing other than an anti-Semitic dog
No,
whistle.
I'm just using,
I
obviously, I'm not a self-loathing Jew, so I'll be using the phrase.
Uh, by the way, I don't know who Joseph Tucker is. Dude, what do you mean? Am I joking? I am reading a quote. I don't need to be joking. I haven't said anything about Marco Rubio. I merely read the quote from Truth
Yeah,
Social.
I mean, look, he
Sorry.
obviously doesn't know who he wants to appoint yet. Some of the names out there, you want to, all I'm going to say, who was it? Joe, with some of the names out there, believe me, I'd rather have Marco Rubio
Oh
than
my
some of the
God.
other
Right?
names out there. Even if you don't want
It was
Marco Rubio, you definitely want him more than, some of the
more
others.
than
And
Steve
because,
Witkoff. Steve Witkoff, who is literally a
yeah, he
guest
has
star.
nothing better to, Steve Witkoff has nothing better to do than be national security advisor. But the idea is that Marco Rubio is going to hold on to it. And there is precedent. Wasn't Kissinger both at one point? It's not that,
I
I
don't know
mean,
if
I
he's
don't know
gonna.
that Marco Rubio is really Kissinger, but, there is
Elise, he was named interim national security advisor. I don't know if they're gonna. I don't know if they're
All
gonna
right.
keep
But
him
I mean,
on.
I just think it's an interesting move to put him over at the UN instead of
I think
just
it's great.
firing him.
I think it's great. I don't know. I know what all the gossip is. The gossip is that the president's chief of staff, Susie Wiles, was no longer talking to Mike Waltz, that she didn't like him, doesn't like him. I don't know why. I've known Mike Waltz. We're not close personal friends, but I've certainly known him. He's been on my podcast with Mark Thiessen once, twice, I don't remember. He's a Green Beret. He served his country. He deserves to be treated well. Not that that's always the signature of the Trump administration. I don't know how he got crosswise with people. And and I don't know whether there's a story here, but I will say that it was interesting the president didn't name someone to replace Elise Stefanik once they pulled her nomination. And I think Mike Waltz will do great. I think he'll do great. It'd be, he's not a sucker. He's young and he can fight, and we need someone to fight pretty hard at the United Nations because that place is a cesspool. Oh my
I
God, what a
really
week!
think one.
Oh my
And
God.
we're not even done with. And then, well, I mean, obviously, a lot of people are saying, like, look, why, the guy that really needs to go is Hegseth. Like, we're on death watch here.
Maybe we'll all be proven wrong. I don't know. I mean, look, Hegseth, more stuff exited this week. We've now got somebody who is apparently being investigated who's close to him. I think he's a liability for the president. I don't think he's going to be able to execute. I don't think that he's a good team builder, and I think Donald Trump could do better. He could also do worse, as we all know. So
And
we'll
worse
just
than
see.
Pete Hegseth. I mean,
I
he
was
could do
surprised to
equally as
see,
bad. I don't know that. There's.
but Mike Waltz wasn't number one on my bingo card to be the first to go. Was he on yours?
I thought he would go before Hegseth. Yeah, but I'm still waiting for Hegseth. Well, because it was obviously that people's knives were out for him more so than they are for Hegseth, and he seems to enjoy more kind of political support from, the base. My political radar is a little, you know, I'm not
It's
really
a
that
hard
political.
it's a hard
I'm not
call.
really
It's
that
a hard
politically
call.
astute. I would have,
Yeah, you
I
are.
think
What are you talking
Hegseth
about?
needs to. I think it's, look, I don't think he enjoys part of his building. He clearly doesn't enjoy the support of the public. Even that interview with the president, obviously the president sat him down and gave him a little bitch slap because he was saying, I think he's going to get it together. Is that what he said? I think he's going to get it together. Suggesting that he knows that he's, not on firm ground.
Well, who knows? We are gonna find out soon. Uh, let's talk about Iran for a second.
Yep. Yep.
Um, if I may coin a
Talks,
phrase once
another round
again,
of
what?
talks? No.
No, no. They just postponed them. We were talking about this just before we got on. They just postponed them. The Iranians accused Brett Schaefer, my colleague at AEI who does UN, who I love, just told me that the Iranians accused the British, the French, and the Germans of providing false information to the International Atomic Energy Agency in order to deceive the Trump administration.
I
I
don't even
feel
know what
like
that means.
I don't know, but you remember that world that Seinfeld episode where everything was the opposite of what it was?
Right.
That was what it felt like, where the IAEA are the good guys, and the French and the British and the Germans are the tough guys on Iran, and the Iranians are just trying to make nice and explain to the Trump administration that everybody is lying about their nuclear program.
Yeah, I mean,
What
look, I thought it was. I mean, I know there were a lot of people that concerned that, the talks were going so well that they thought that maybe the administration would, I think you included, were concerned the administration, President Trump wanted a deal so bad that it would look very much like something called the JCPOA, which was the Obama era deal. I think the whole idea is, look, is Iran going to be able to enrich uranium? Are they not? I don't think that's clear in terms of these negotiations, but my prediction is yes.
Uh, I don't know.
What say you?
I don't know. You know something? We don't hear people say it often enough in Washington, D.C. I don't know. I don't
Everybody
know.
take a breath and try it. I don't know.
I don't know. One of the first pieces of advice I got on Capitol Hill from a very long-time staffer was when someone asks you a question, when a senator says, "How did that vote go?" Just give them an answer. They'll never remember A, who you are, and B, what you told them, but they will remember if you don't know. And the answer is actually, that was terrible advice. Just say, I don't know.
I'll get back to you on
And I
that.
have no, I'll get back to you on that. I'll have to take that question. All right. We teased the idea that we were actually going to be talking about the first 100 days.
We are going to in a
What,
minute.
so, okay. All right.
Well, I mean, I think that, TBD on the Iran deal. I guess that's all we can say. They'll get back to talk. I think they're jerking him around anyway, is my personal opinion. So they
Well,
know how to talk. Look, we've said before, Donald Trump may have the art of the deal, but the Iranians are master
oh,
negotiators and
they are so
they
good.
can play him all day long, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't
No,
even be an
I agree.
affront to anybody. Like, they can play anybody all day long. They may be nasty terrorists and murderers, but they're damn good negotiators.
They are,
100
and look,
days.
and they're sophisticated,
Yeah.
yeah, and so, listen, we'll see what happens, you and I have talked endlessly. You know what was really interesting, by the way, and again, folks, straighten us out if we end up talking too much inside Washington baseball, but it was interesting to me that when the deal got done with the Ukrainians, the mineral deal, Witkoff was nowhere to be seen. It was all Bissett, the Secretary of the Treasury. That was interesting
Well,
to me.
it's because it's supposed to look like a financial thing for the US,
Well,
right?
I guess, I don't know, but it is pretty interesting in any case.
Well,
So,
that
tell
could
me.
that could, if we were able to, it could lead us into 100 days and tariffs and,
Don't talk to
um,
me about tariffs, woman. I don't wanna hear
yeah.
about it. I just my god, there's nothing there's we said it all last week, the week before, there's nothing. I actually think, and Stephen, my husband and I were talking about this at dinner, I think that Trump is trying to find a way to back down and doesn't know how. But it's interesting. We're not seeing the same kind of rhetoric around this anymore, and it's going to start to bite. And as soon as it starts to bite, people are going to be much less sympathetic with this garbage than they are. So I, I mean, I think
I mean,
there may.
fine. So
I don't
let's
know.
move on from tariffs. But look, I mean, and we're probably going to disagree on this, but the
No.
deal today, the deal today was a good, was good. And I
Yeah.
think, but otherwise, I'd say, and you've been around a little bit longer than me.
Hey.
But
Hey.
well, we've been friends about as long as I've been in Washington, which is a very long time. So, um, I think that and I've covered, this is maybe my eighth administration. The first 100 days, the kind of bad will that we've engendered around the world and given up soft power. And that's not to say a lot of these things didn't have a germ of, yes, we needed reform. Yes, USAID needed reform. Yes, blah, 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 and blah. Yeah, you could have seen, like, little gems of good instincts, but the execution on all of it and messages he was sending around the world, the goodwill, soft power, strength that we've kind of absconded with, given away, surrendered in the last 100 days, seems like 100 years. 100 days is really depressing as an American.
Um. Yeah, we disagree. Not because I disagree on the execution, and we do it. I think we agree about that a lot. I have written so repeatedly on the Substack. I'm basically just starting to post the same thing over and over again. I don't always disagree with the aim. I disagree a lot with the execution, and I disagree a lot with the execution because so much of it is gratuitous, and so much of it is incompetent. You know something? I mean, when I worked in government, my role was overseeing all of our foreign assistance to the Middle East and South Asia. That's the big chunk of
A
what
lot
we
of
send
cash.
abroad every year. That's a lot of money, and the amount that was wasted, the amount that was badly spent, the amount that was measured solely by what we put in rather than we got out. And by that, I don't mean profit; I mean results for people abroad and for Americans was just shameful. So, I am never going to sign up to the idea that these programs should exist just because they should exist. On the other hand, if you were going to shut this stuff down, you could do it a lot more competently than Elon Musk did it. I'm happy to see the back of him go. Bye bye. Enjoy your Teslas, all of you people in San Francisco.
Just the kind of animosity, whether it's with Canada, whether it's with Europe, whether it's with
And boy,
others.
did we get punished for Canada, huh? Look what happened. If you're a
The only
conservative,
people
and
who are
I
looking
am,
really good too right now are the people in El Salvador, it seems like.
let's not touch that one. We saw the election. We saw the election in Canada. Trump is the one who tipped that election. The conservatives were 25 points ahead 2 months ago, and they just lost. And they lost to somebody who is fundamentally Justin Trudeau, but less annoying. Justin Trudeau, but less gross and smarmy. But Justin Trudeau, nonetheless, policy wise, the conservatives should have won. They had a great leader, they had great policies, but they didn't stand up to Trump, and Trump screwed them. Elections tomorrow, no, day after tomorrow in Australia. I'm afraid
It
the
looks
same
like we're
thing's
going to
going
have
to
the same
happen.
thing.
Yep, I think that's right. I don't think this is as much Trump related, but I think at the same time, people look at the United States and they're like, oh my God, do I need that? And the answer is no, of course you don't. So unfortunately, my guy, Dutton, is going to go down to not my guy, Albo, in Australia, notwithstanding the fact that Australia has shamed itself in a whole variety of ways. Albanese hasn't stood up to China. He has stood against Israel, stood with terrorists, not stood up to anti-Semites. He's just been horrible. But again, this is just the environment that we're seeing now. And you're right. That is a product of the first 100 days. If you want to do what Donald Trump wanted to do, and you don't have to agree with it, there were a lot better ways of doing them. And Canada 51st state aside, everything from freaking Greenland to the way they shut down AID to
Panama Canal.
the Panama Canal to the contempt that they showed for people who, again, I don't think AID is a very good organization. I think it should have been folded into state long ago. I don't think people should have a sinecure working for the US government. I don't think they were very effective. I think our soft power was more squishy and useless than a lot of people think it was. And I think it needed to be fixed. But if you want to fix it, freaking fix it. Do not do it that way. And do not show contempt to people who, even though you may not like them, not stand with them, not agree with them, we're serving their federal government. That is a real job. And, we love the guys who serve in the military who stand in the face of danger. But the truth is, people who go to work every day in Washington have real jobs working for the government too. And I don't like how that happened. And I think it's a shame. And look, you and I have said it 1,000 times now together already on this show, in which we're in like our fourth episode, which is actually, this is Congress's job. Where is Congress?
Where is Congress? And I mean, because Congress isn't taking a stand, isn't pushing back against him, then it's becoming incumbent upon the courts. And we don't know, sometimes the courts are pushing back, sometimes they're not. But if he thinks he can roll over Congress, then the fear is that he thinks he can roll over the courts. And then what happens if, he disobeys the courts?
Hey, somebody just asked a question that you and I didn't talk about, and it's kind of a disgrace that more people aren't talking about this. Let's take a second and talk about that terrorist attack in India last week.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
didn't,
what's going on there is really scary.
and why is this just like an afterthought here? Do we no longer care about this kind of terrorism?
Well,
20,
I think
26 people were murdered.
the problem, I would think the reason it's such a good question, and we have talked, Danny and I have talked about India, Pakistan, and why nobody cares more that two nuclear powers are almost going back to war. I think maybe it's because those terrorist groups aren't the kind of global jihadi groups that perhaps could threaten the United States. But yes, you're right. I mean, it's such a good point. Um, I think, you saw over the last couple of days that the US is really sending a message to Pakistan that it needs to take action. The Pakistanis have had over the last, several years, and especially the US from Afghanistan, more and more terrorist attacks. But this one isn't the
So
kind of,
brazen.
and also isn't the kind of Haqqani, Taliban-y type terrorism that's their sole objective. This is against India. This is in Kashmir. This could really, erupt into a greater threat between Pakistan and India. But for Pakistan, it doesn't want to be seen as doing anything to help India, and that's why I think they're not taking greater action.
Well, look, you know something? All of these is one of the most important things to understand about Islamist terrorism and about jihadis is they all have different names. They may have different objectives. It may just be Kashmir, it may be Afghanistan, it may be the two holy mosques, it may be Jerusalem, whatever it is. This is the same ideology, and we cannot say, "Oh, they're just killing people in Africa. Oh, they're just killing
Right.
people in Kashmir." This
Yeah.
is what happened before 9/11, and this is a huge mistake. We should talk more about this next week,
Yeah,
but we've
let's
now
do it. Let's
we
do
will.
it. We're 1 minute over. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Clearly, every week there's more and more to talk about. Don't forget to send us your suggestions, your comments, topic ideas, drink recipes, all of it. We look forward to seeing you next week
But especially
on
drink
our Hot Take
recipes.
Happy Hour.
Cheers, everybody. Lost you, Elise.